So first things first, how are you?
I'm doing good, thank you. How are you doing, Robin?
I'm doing well, doing well. Thank you for asking. So before we get into the EP and the music you've been working on lately, I'd like to jump back to the beginning. Uh, do you remember what the first kind of musical thing was that kind of captured your attention, that made you want to create music?
Wow, that would have to take me right back to when I was tiny and listening to the likes of Bewitched and the Spice Girls. But
Okay.
for a long time then, I was, yeah, I thought it was a little too scary to be an actual songwriter. But I think I'd got to such a quite a sad place in, like a lot of us, in 2020.
Mm,
And I think, if anything, I would life slowed down. So I was able to realize, oh, actually, this is what I've always wanted to do. The last thing I've thought about at night. Because I've written songs since I can remember. And
okay.
actually, one thing, I remember I was on a plane on the way to Chicago and the plane was going crazy and I thought I was going to die. So I started to listen to my voice notes that I would just randomly sing a song, usually start to finish in my phone and then forget about it. And I started to listen to those and I thought, maybe they're okay. But it was sort of a process of attrition, as I call it. And then it led me up to 2020 when I thought, okay, maybe this is what I should do.
That's very interesting because, as you mentioned, you had been writing music before you kind of made that decision for yourself. So what was the intention, or what did you get out of writing those thoughts down and kind of creating something out of nothing?
Um, I think it's just a natural, it's just who I've always been. Like I can
Mm.
remember singing to the cows age 5, um, and making up silly songs. And it's something that anyone who knew me back then would think, you would do that. Like I remember the first song I ever wrote when I was like 7. Um, it's not that terrible, quite terrible, but um, I think it's just so a part of who I am. And I guess as I'm learning and growing and working out, okay, how much do I need to communicate my own feelings and how how often do I need to help others as well? Because that's the tension of an artist, because we can get quite narcissistic, I think. So it's all about me, but actually we want others to really connect. And um, so, yeah, I think it's just an extension of myself. Yeah.
But but it's interesting then that you mentioned earlier that initially it was kind of scary to think of yourself as an artist, as somebody who did that. So what was the switch that kind of flipped in 2021? What made you think, okay, I'm just going for it?
I think so. Before it was like, this is not a sensible option. And it's still not a sensible option.
Why?
As
Why
you know,
not?
I will, I guess financially, it's not that, it's at the moment, it's a lot of investment. But so that was always in my head. And sort of from the background I'm from sort of very professional careers.
Mm.
And I always knew I didn't quite fit into that role. Um, but the switch was, yeah, the world might be ending, so I might as well.
Well, that was a good reason.
Exactly.
So, what was it nerve-wracking, or were you anxious when you kind of had your first batch of songs and put it out? Because you're kind of jumping into the unknown in a way. So what was that like?
So my personality is, once I have an idea, I go 120 miles an hour.
Okay.
So I decided to launch Alex Kate, sort of October, recorded the tracks, and then started releasing in November.
Okay.
And then as I went, sort of changed the tracks as I was releasing. Um, it was nerve wracking, and some of them I listened to and I cringed slightly. But I think I'm always going to cringe. I think, like, even this recent record that I produced about 3 different times with different people, I still listen to a couple of things and I'm like, oh, but um, but I think that's the artist. We're never satisfied. Yeah, it was nerve-wracking, but I think what was amazing is I'd finally said to my parents and various other close friends that this is what I want to do. And they were like, well, why haven't you done it sooner? And I was like, but yeah, so I'm really grateful I've got a lot of support around me.
Yeah, and going from those initial songs that you released to this recent EP now, Rebel for Love, how do you see your own musical development in that? Because as you mentioned, it sounds like you're quite strict on yourself, or you're quite, you set the bar quite high for yourself.
Yeah, I do. It's so funny because my process of writing is I'm very childlike. I play. I don't have any structure, and I have a few writing partners, and there's no pressure if we don't write anything. And actually, most of the tracks on the record have come out of me just like not forcing anything. So, but then the curation of the tracks, that's interesting. You've observed that I'm quite strict. I think because I've sort of come late to the party, I want to make sure that I'm considered one of the people that are in the game right now, and sort of feel like I have a shorter time to develop. But, and I think also I'm impatient, but I think I've definitely developed my sound. So sort of the first record, I was sort of working it out, throwing paint at a wall and hoping for the best. And my lovely producer, Joshua, was very patient with me. And then the second record, I think, whilst like as you as an artist too, I'm sure whilst you're writing your next project, you've developed so much more whilst you're releasing the first. Sure. So even whilst I was releasing my first EP, I was like, the soundscape that I was thinking I wanted to be in is the sort of Kate Bush, Florence the Machine, Haim kind of world. But I was producing more kind of a little bit more electro pop. But I also don't want to slightly put constraints on me. So my next music that I've recorded and releasing in the new year has got a bit more of a Christine and the Queens kind of vibe coming through. So we'll see. I think I'll constantly evolve.
Yeah, and it's also, you don't have to pin yourself down on one thing for you. That's the good thing about kind of doing EPs and that kind of stuff. You can kind of hone in on different things. And let's do so. You mentioned Kate Bush. So one of the songs, Rebel for Love, is kind of, at least the way I hear it, comes kind of in that area. So what was the starting point for that song? Was it the music, or were it some lyrics?
It was, so I wrote this with my first producer, Joshua Taylor. And the night before, I got the phrase Rebel for Love in my head. And I just was like, whoa, that's a cool phrase. And almost like a movie of Robin Hood and Maid Marian. So I thought, what would it look like if Maid Marian was the more of the heroine rather than Robin Hood? And so that was playing in my mind. And I came to Josh and said, and I had a sort of simple chord pattern. And then we just kind of, I think within the space of about an hour, wrote it. And it was really quite quick. And but that's usually the case with my songs. And then I think then curating the kind of production. So at the time it was just keys and a bit of a beat. The process was quite long because I recorded it with an original producer, and then in Norway, and then with a guy called Jorgen, who's amazing. But I didn't feel it had the grit that I needed. And so then I brought Daniel Newcomb into the project, and he just added that sort of extra polish that I was looking for.
And this is now, I think, your second EP. Are you working towards an album, or have you not thought that far ahead yet? Are you just living in the moment?
So I would love to do an album. At the moment, I'm doing a third EP. So that is, I've nearly recorded that all and releasing from February. Yeah, but I'm writing all the time. So I think an album will happen, but I'm not really forcing it. So Yeah, I would love to. I think also what's been nice is with the EPs is working out who I work well with, because
Sure.
obviously the changes in direction in this last project has been quite expensive. So it's been nice to sort of work out, okay, a better process, I think.
Yeah, because in terms of the songwriting, and you kind of alluded to it a little bit just now, but what is your approach? Are you someone who just kind of hammers at it 9 to 5 every day, or is it you kind of have to wait for certain moments of inspiration, and like you say, then within an hour something comes out?
Yeah, so it depends. So with Josh, with Rebel for Love, we'd set aside a time to write. And then I have another writing partner called Heather, who she's in Toronto, and we do Zoom calls. We did it once a week for a year, but sometimes we just ended up chatting. She plays guitar for a pop star out in the States, and was her work completely folded. So she just needed that contact time. And that's been so special because we've kind of written quite a big catalogue of stuff, not necessarily just for me, but to pitch to others. But with my songs that I've written solely, so Lost in You, Don't Hold Back, Lost in You, I wrote within 3 minutes.
Okay.
So it was actually quite a weird story because I was watching a murder mystery show. And suddenly I felt, this is how I describe it, I sort of feel electric, static electricity above my head. I almost need to just grab it. And so I ran upstairs to my sort of basic laptop and mic, and quickly built a track using samples, and then just sang Lost in You start to finish. And it pretty much is exactly the same as to what I did. So that's pretty cool. And my first ever release, Love Drug, also, that was, written start to finish. I sang the lyrics and melody start to finish straight away. So I'm kind of, it depends. Oh, and Don't Hold Back, which was another release of this EP. I built the track on a course with Charlie Puth. Have you heard of the monthly courses? They're now called Studio.
I'm not sure, no.
Anyway, so Charlie Puth and Ryan Tedder and these different amazing people do these courses. And anyway, he said the way he writes is he builds the track, then he sort of finds out the melody, he sort of works out the melody from the track, and then he does the lyrics, which is very different. So it was quite fun, and that's what happened with Don't Hold Back.
Are you then somebody who kind of focuses on the words first then? Is that what first comes to mind, and the kind of the stories you want to tell?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think chords are definitely the last. But I'll have like little melody nuggets in my head. So currently the reason why I'm in this space is this is where beautiful. I did my EP launch, and I come and practice here because it's free. So, it is so beautiful. But even just before this, I was just playing on the piano and just like had this sort of melody in my head, and I know it's going to come into a song. It might be in a year's time, 2 years' time, but it's sort of, I don't put pressure on working out, not forcing anything. I think what I've realized with other friends who I admire as writers, that's what they've always told me. So because I think you can hear a song when you know it's been written as like, okay, and now we reach the chorus at 40 seconds and 4 on the floor and let's get you pumping. And I sort of, yes, I know it works. There's a science behind it, but I think I would like to do it a little bit differently.
Yeah. Final question then. How do you see your own ambition? Do you have certain stages you want to play? Do you have certain kind of goals that you set in front of you? Or as I mentioned earlier, are you more of an in the moment person?
I'm very ambitious.
Okay.
I am in the moment too, because I think it's very important to smell the roses. That's one of my main phrases. But at the same time, I would love to play Glastonbury. Love to play Coachella. I would love to play in Red Rocks. There's a lot of places. I'd love to collaborate with Chris Martin. I would love.
Sure.
I've got big plans. But at the same time, I'm celebrating my 2-year birthday of Alex Kate, and I'm really proud of myself and how far I've come, and I'm hoping that this year will be great and I'll be able to perform more, because I haven't really. Yeah, I have got big dreams for sure.
Well, that's very good to hear. Alex, I hope everything goes well for you. Best of luck with everything. And thank you for taking the time to talk with me.
Oh, thank you so much. What a pleasure.